If you pick up an LP, if you've got good eyesight, you can see a spiral. If you look under an electron microscope, you can actually see the vibrations that have been cut into the vinyl. The record has vibrations in it that go down to under 1 micron. And to put that in perspective, a human hair is typically 35 microns. And the information in an LP can get down to less than a 30th of that. The very small vibrations that are imprinted into an LP are an exact copy of the vibrations that exist in the air when someone sings or plays an instrument. And the job of sound reproduction equipment is get as close as possible to those original vibrations. There's no perfection in recorded music. We can only try and get even better sound quality from that LP, but for some people is a little bit of a god. I think the world often has the impression of entrepreneurs being people with ambition, that really know what they want to achieve. My life hasn't been anything like that whatsoever, but I've tended to always question everything that's thrown at me, and I'm curious about how things work. How can I do that? How can I solve that? I think I've always had an intense curiosity, and I'm aware it's more than most people's. I just learned at a very young age that you could fix things. And someone gave me an old turntable that they found on a rubbish dump, and I blagged the motor, stuck it on a bit of wood, and started playing records, but there was a lot of hum. And I read a few magazines and they said, oh, all you've got to do is to make the plinth much heavier. So I took it all apart again. I lovingly mixed up cement and moulded it around the motor, moulding it around the bearing. 3-4 days later, I put it all back and the hum had got louder. And I started to think, why? In making a heavy plinth, it became obvious that I was just creating a way of transferring the hum from the motor even more loudly into the rotating turntable and into the record. So I then did the opposite. I just took all the concrete off, got a lighter bit of chipboard, and suddenly the hum got a bit better. And I started to notice sound quality changes as well as getting rid of just the hum itself. And that was the beginning of Rega's interest in the fact that the turntable has an influence on the sound quality. And turntable engineering captured my imagination because it's a continuous learning process. And what we have done is rethought the concept of a turntable, how the mechanical parts of a turntable can be very different. But the biggest problem is that every part of the turntable can move and can vibrate. It's impossible to stop that, but all we can do in order to improve it is to make everything on a turntable move less. When we're talking about microscopic vibrations, part of this is by making the materials stiffer. Because nothing is perfect, its success depends on the compromises that you make between all of the parts, and the engineering has to be to make those joints, junctions, materials and stiffnesses as ideal compromises as possible. The ideal turntable is the ideal set of compromises at a given price, and that's dictated by the engineering and the materials used. Our world, the Rega world, there is and has been a constant question of why has vinyl returned. And certainly at the beginning it was very much about nostalgia. People talked about the crackly, warm sound, the pleasure of taking an album out of its cover. I don't personally subscribe to any of those feelings at all. The only reason for vinyl for me is the potential of sound quality of vinyl far, far outweighs the potential of digital. It's just much, much better. We believe it's actually technologically superior. There were times when we had huge demand and everybody was saying, Roy, you need to go to the bank and borrow money so you can make more. And I'd say it's not about money. You know, to grow, you've got to train more people. We're not just making something that anybody can make. It needs people who care about what they're doing. We sat down and had really intense discussions about what we would like to see. And that turned out to be a company where everyone took control of their own job, everyone took control of their own responsibility, and no one exerted authority over people. We were doing something that was federal, that was pushing the envelope a little bit. You get to a point where you've got a large group of people who enjoy the fact that they can exercise their responsibility, put in more input themselves and get back the enjoyment. That now happens with almost everyone at Rega. And I don't think it's training, it's just that the company's ethos has perpetuated those sorts of people joining us. And it's happened over the last 10 years. It's something beautiful and wonderful and something I just look at in wonderment as how has this happened and aren't I proud to be a part of it. With turntables, in the time we've been involved, we've been able to make huge, significant changes. And I think we can continue to do that. Engineering as a science has developed around getting the maximum return in power, usually, at the minimum cost. If you have a motor that is in a wing mirror pod on a car, it needs to be very small, very powerful and very cheap. For a turntable, all of those parameters are entirely the opposite. You need minimal power levels, but the lowest possible vibration. But there are many, many aspects of a motor in itself that can reduce the vibration levels of a motor but are not important normally. One of the wonderful things about Rega is because we've grown larger now and the turntable market's got bigger, we are finding companies where the technology we need gives them a competitive advantage over their competitors in other fields. And so the far-thinking owners of those companies are happy to indulge us. I see no reason for materials not to keep developing. They're developing lighter and stiffer materials for bulletproof vests, for instance, lighter and stiffer materials for rockets. All of those sorts of engineering endeavours that we can keep an eye on, we can look at, we can understand, will help us in the future. And now, after 50 years, the turntable world is quite understood, and that wasn't the case for most of my life. We're selling just to ordinary people who want to listen to music, and a percentage of them are saying, oh, that sounds a little better and I like that and I'll buy that one. And that is just enormously uplifting for us, because in the early days of Rega, people would say, how can the turntable make a difference? Music certainly has a major effect for many people. People can get to cry sometimes listening to recorded music. People can get their hair standing up, and we just feel so happy that there are enough people in the world that listen to one of our products and say, I want to buy that.